Okay, so have you ever thought about like how many rules we encounter every day?
Hmm. Interesting question.
I mean, really, even in the most ordinary places.
Okay, yeah.
Like, picture this. You're starving, ready for some delicious Indonesian street food,
Right.
and bam, you realize there's a whole system, you know,
Uh,
the queue, the etiquette, how you flag down the vendor.
yeah, I see what you mean.
It's like even enjoying a meal has its own set of rules.
It's true.
And if a street food stall has them, you better believe running an entire country does too.
Absolutely. Rules and regulations, they're everywhere.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. The rule book for how the Indonesian government interacts with, well, everyone, Indonesian administrative law.
And it's not just about the government, though, is it?
No, not at all.
Huh. It's about how those rules impact your everyday life right here in Indonesia.
Exactly. And to navigate this world, we've got a treasure map of sorts.
Oh, tell me more.
A university course syllabus on, you guessed it, Indonesian administrative law.
Okay, so we're going straight to the source.
We are. And instead of a whole semester, we're distilling the good stuff, the aha moments, into a quick, insightful journey, ready to get started.
I am. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first, even the title of this course, Hukum Administrasi Negara, has me a little curious. What's the story there?
Well, it actually highlights something quite fascinating about this field. You see, even within Indonesian legal circles, there isn't just one name for administrative law.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You'll hear Busrizalti, Administratie-frecht, Hukum Tata Usaha Negara. It's a bit of a linguistic melting pot.
So, like, different flavors of the same dish, essentially. What does that tell us about Indonesian administrative law?
I think it reflects the evolution and diverse influences on this area of law. And perhaps more importantly, it shows us that Indonesian administrative law isn't some fixed, one-size-fits-all system.
Okay, interesting.
It's dynamic, shaped by history, different schools of thought, even how things play out in the real world.
Okay, so instead of just a dictionary definition, we're getting into the messy human side of law.
Exactly.
I like it. Now, the syllabus isn't just throwing terms at us, though, right?
Right.
It has a structure, a way of approaching the subject. What's the big picture view before we zoom in?
Well, the syllabus cleverly starts by laying the groundwork. It emphasizes the relationship between administrative law and constitutional law.
Okay, so how are they connected?
Think of it like this. Constitutional law is the bedrock, the foundation, the house. It lays out the fundamental principles of governance, the structure of the government. Administrative law, that's the framework built on top of that foundation, the walls, the roof. It's about how the government actually interacts with its citizens day to day.
So less about grand pronouncements and more about the nuts and bolts, the nitty-gritty of how things actually work.
Yes, exactly.
Which, let's be honest, is how most of us experience the government permits, licenses, services, you know, the fun stuff.
Exactly. The syllabus drives home the point that Indonesian administrative law isn't some abstract legal concept. It's about your life as a citizen, how your tax money is used, how infrastructure projects get approved, even down to how your local school is run. This stuff matters.
You said it. Okay, so we're starting to see the relevance here. But this syllabus isn't just a what is Indonesian administrative law, right?
Right.
It's also about the how to learn it, how to think about it.
Yes.
I'm curious, what stands out to you about the approach this syllabus takes?
One thing that strikes me is the emphasis on active learning. The syllabus outlines various approaches like small group discussion, discovery learning, even contextual instruction. It's about actively engaging with the material, not just passively absorbing information.
Like roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty kind of learning.
Precisely. It recognizes that Indonesian administrative law isn't just a dusty old textbook to memorize. It's about critical thinking, real-world application, understanding the nuances.
All right, I'm hooked. So we've got the foundation, we see the syllabus's approach. Are we ready to jump into some of the core concepts it highlights?
Let's do it. Get ready for some real eye-openers.
All right, so we're ready to dive into some core concepts of Indonesian administrative law. Where does our syllabus treasure map take us first?
Well, it takes us straight to the source, literally.
Oh.
The syllabus dives into the very foundation of Indonesian administrative law, where it all comes from.
Okay, and what does it say?
Well, it's more interesting than you might think,
How so?
because it's not just a matter of here's the law, end of story.
Okay, I see what you mean.
The syllabus distinguishes between what it calls formal sources and material sources.
Formal and material sources.
What's the difference?
Think of it like this. What's the difference between the ingredients list on a food package
Okay,
and, actually tasting the food?
got it. Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. What are these material sources?
Think of it as everything that shapes how administrative law is understood and applied in real life.
So, like what? Give me an example.
Court decisions, for example, academic interpretations,
Uh-huh.
even those unspoken rules and customs within government agencies.
So it's acknowledging that the real world is messy, dynamic. There's this whole other layer of law in action that goes beyond the books.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And it's crucial for truly grasping Indonesian administrative law. I appreciate that the syllabus embraces this complexity.
Yeah, it definitely seems to. Okay, so the syllabus acknowledges that there's the law on paper, and then there's how things actually work in the real world.
Precisely.
Now, speaking of how things actually work, this syllabus seems to break down the government's role in a very deliberate way.
Right.
There's a lot about different types of actions and decisions, What's the deal with that?
It's all about understanding the mechanics of power, how the government actually exercises its authority.
Okay, so break that down for me a little.
Well, for example, the syllabus distinguishes between tindakan pemerintahan,
Okay.
which are formal legal actions, and what it calls perbuatan material,
We're waiting material.
the on-the-ground actions that get things done.
So it's recognizing the difference between, like, a decision made in a government office and what actually happens, on the street in our communities.
Exactly. It's grounding the law in reality, preparing anyone who wants to navigate this system for the real world.
Which, let's be honest, can be pretty bureaucratic.
Indeed. And to navigate that bureaucracy effectively, the syllabus points to a crucial concept, AUPB.
Okay, another one for the Indonesian language enthusiast in me. What's AUPB all about?
It boils down to general principles of good governance.
Like what kinds of principles?
Accountability, transparency, fairness, all the things we hope for from a well-run government.
Right, because it's not enough to just have rules, right? It's about how those rules are made and enforced. Good governance is the goal, not just some idealistic notion.
You've got it.
Right.
And the syllabus connects AUPB to this broader global conversation about good governance, showing that these principles are becoming increasingly important worldwide.
I like that this deep dive is making that global connection.
Yeah.
Now, there's this other term that caught my eye, Freeze-Ermison. It sounds very official and a tad intimidating. What does that mean?
Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay, good.
It's a German legal term, meaning free discretion.
Free discretion, okay.
The syllabus uses it to talk about situations where government officials have some flexibility in applying the law.
So it's like the rules can't account for every single scenario, so sometimes officials need to make judgment calls.
Exactly.
That seems like a recipe for inconsistencies, or worse, if it's not done carefully.
That's the crux of it. The syllabus emphasizes that Freeze-Ermison isn't a free-for-all. It needs to operate within defined boundaries and be subject to judicial review. It's about balancing flexibility with accountability.
Checks and balances, got it. Speaking of important legal terms, this syllabus spends a good amount of time on something called beschikking. It seems pretty crucial.
It is. Beschikking refers to concrete government decisions that directly affect individuals or specific groups.
Okay.
Think permits, licenses, things like that.
So the stuff that really hits home, that directly impacts people's lives. What does the syllabus tell us about how beschikking work in practice?
It dives into the nitty-gritty, the requirements for issuing a beschikking, how it can be changed or revoked, even what happens if it's found to be flawed. It's about understanding the life cycle of these decisions and their very real consequences.
So it's not just about what a beschikking is, but understanding the whole ecosystem around it.
Exactly.
The checks and balances, the potential pitfalls, the impact on people like you and me.
Precisely.
Now, there's another term in here that seems connected to beschikking beleidsregels. What's the link?
You're right to notice the connection. Think of beleidsregels, which translates to policy rules,
Okay.
as the guiding principles that inform those specific beschikking decisions. They help ensure consistency and predictability in how the government applies the law.
Okay, so while beschikking are specific decisions, beleidsregels are more like the bigger picture guidelines that those decisions are supposed to follow.
Exactly. They provide a framework for how discretion should be used, helping to ensure fairness and prevent arbitrary decisions.
It's all starting to come together. This syllabus is really painting a picture of how Indonesian administrative law strives for fairness and transparency in its processes. But we've only just dipped our toes into this ocean of knowledge, haven't we? There's still so much more to uncover.
You're right. This is just the beginning of our exploration. And this syllabus is proving to be an excellent guide.
Okay, so we've explored these really fascinating concepts like beschikking and beleidsregels and really getting a feel for the mechanics of Indonesian administrative law. But this syllabus, it doesn't just focus on the small stuff, right?
Right.
It also zooms out to look at the bigger picture, like how the Indonesian government is structured. It's all connected.
Absolutely. You can't have a deep understanding of administrative law without looking at the playing field,
Okay, I like that analogy.
The syllabus takes us on this tour of the different levels of government,
Okay.
the central authority, those regional players, and even hints at the concepts of decentralisasi and deconcentrasi. Decentralization versus deconcentration of power.
Okay, those sound like two very different ways of running a country.
They are.
What's the difference?
So imagine you're trying to build a new school in your town. Okay.
Double.
But decentralizasi, more power is given to your local government to make decisions about that school. They might have more say in the budget, the curriculum, even the hiring of teachers.
So it's about bringing decisions closer to the people they affect.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, on the other hand, deconcentrasi is more like the central government delegating tasks to regional offices.
Okay.
They're still calling the shots, but maybe a local office manages the day-to-day construction or handles paperwork. It streamlines things, but ultimate control stays at the top.
Ah, so it's about who has the final say.
Exactly.
But also, like, how much autonomy different levels of government have.
Yes.
It's like that old saying, all politics is local. This syllabus seems to get that.
It does. And this ties into another key concept. The syllabus highlights bureaucracy.
Okay, there's a word that often makes people sigh.
Often, yes.
Yeah, bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, it doesn't always have the best reputation, does it?
It doesn't, no.
But this syllabus, it seems to be presenting a more nuanced view, though.
It is.
Connecting it to public policy and management, it's more than just paperwork and red tape, right?
Exactly. The syllabus wants us to see bureaucracy as the engine of government, the system that turns ideas and policies into actual outcomes. A well-functioning bureaucracy is vital for delivering those public services, putting those laws into practice, and ultimately making good governance a reality.
So it's recognizing that even the best intentions, they can fall flat without a system to execute them properly.
Yes.
It's about the how as much as the what of governing. And speaking of those doing the governing, this syllabus makes it clear that public officials, they have their own set of rules to follow as well. They're not just regular folks with fancy titles, right?
Definitely not. The syllabus highlights how Indonesian law gives public officials a distinct legal status. It's about their responsibilities, their ethical obligations, the legal framework that guides their actions.
So accountability is a big deal here. They're held to a higher standard because of the power they wield.
Yes.
And to make sure that accountability is real and not just talk, the syllabus also touches on the systems for oversight,
Yes.
and those fascinating administrative courts.
Right. It's like the checks and balances we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The syllabus acknowledges that a healthy democracy needs mechanisms for citizens to challenge government decisions, seek solutions for their grievances, and ensure that officials are answerable for their actions.
It's like the legal system is a safety net,
Exactly.
ensuring things are running as they should. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From Fries Ermesen to bureaucracy, this syllabus has given us a crash course in the intricacies of Indonesian administrative law.
It has.
For our listeners, what stands out to you as the most important takeaway?
For me, it's the sheer depth and nuance revealed by this syllabus. It's easy to think of administrative law as dry and technical,
Sure.
but this deep dive has shown us that it's anything but. Indonesian administrative law is a dynamic system, constantly evolving to manage the complex relationship between citizens and their government.
Yeah, it's like we've been given this behind-the-scenes look at how things really work.
Exactly.
And while we may not be experts overnight, we've gained a new appreciation, I think, for the intricacies of it all.
I agree.
And for you listening, as you go about your day, I encourage you to think about the subtle presence of Indonesian administrative law all around you. That new park being built, the process of getting a business license, these are all shaped by the system we've explored today. What aspects of the system resonate most with your life? What questions are swirling in your mind after this deep dive? Hold on to those questions, that curiosity, because it's the key to deeper understanding.